Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Nins.
Welcome to episode 26 of She Rebel Radio, Demystifying the Art of Women Speaking Up in Public, with Esther Stanhope, confident speaker, personal impact expert, and former live BBC producer. Importantly, Esther is the author of Goodbye Glossophobia, which is a pocket guide to help you banish your fear of public speaking. Esther, it's amazing to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thank you very much for having me on She Rebel Radio. I love it.
It's good to have you here. And I would love to kick off with telling the audience that firstly, you didn't make up the word glossophobia. What does it actually mean?
Well, if you look up the word glossophobia in the dictionary, it says the fear of public speaking, and Prince Harry suffers from it. Oh, that's right. 75% of us suffer from it, including Prince Harry, which I think is hilarious because actually, in my experience, it's mainly women who suffer from it more than men, but they use Prince Harry as an example.
Again, women not being used as the example. And you've written inside the book, in fact, a special note and call to action for women because we are less likely to step up into the spotlight and speak up in public. What are your insights as to why that might be?
Well, it's funny. In my experience, so I work in the city a lot. I'm a former BBC producer, but I now work with accountants, with women in banking and men as well. But I work with a lot of women, and I speak at a lot of women's networks and diversity networks. And in my experience, and people can argue this point, like, well, there's nothing wrong with women. Women don't need to be fixed. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with women. However, when I am standing in front of an auditorium of 200 women and the head of talent is saying, women don't need to be fixed, women don't need to be fixed. And everyone says, oh, you're right. And they're scared to kind of speak up, to challenge that they might have a few confidence issues. This is a true story. So the head of talent was speaking to 200 women at this women's initiative. And as soon as the head of talent had walked out of the room and I came on, I said, so who suffers from confidence and feeling confident to speak up? Does anyone feel that, that they're not confident? Every single person put their hand up. And the woman in the front row said, has the head of talent gone? Are we allowed to say we do need some help?
That we do want help. Was the head of talent male or female?
She was female. I think it would have been really frightening to say, look, actually, we do need help. And it's not that women need to be fixed. And I do agree with that. However, if I've got an audience of men and women and I ask, who's willing to stand up and speak out and speak in public, most of the time, men are much more kind of bit more up for it. Men are more likely to go, I'll give it a go without trying to be perfect. Women are much more likely to go, I'm not 100% about that, so I'm not going to say it. Whereas men are happy to be 60% sure and they'll just pipe up and say whatever they want. This is another true story. I was talking about this 60% phenomenon at a global bank and a diversity network. There are about 90 women in the audience and about 10 men. And I said, the trouble is there is this 60% issue. So if you had a meeting and you've got people around the boardroom table, 8 men and 2 women, a man will pipe up and say, let's change this multi-million-dollar oil deal. He'll only be 60% sure. How sure do you think a woman has to be to say that around a boardroom table? So when I ask the audience, okay, women, just shout out, a percentage. How sure do you have to be to speak up? And they start shouting out figures like that. I'm saying, if men want to be 60% sure, how sure do you think women have to be? And do you know what the average answer is? The average shout out that I get?
No, what's the average?
Well, the average is, what do you reckon? If I were to ask you, how sure do you have to be to pipe up in a meeting and say, we need to change this multi-million-dollar deal? How sure do you think you'd have to be to say that?
75, 80%?
Oh, Oh, you're a rebel. You're a rebel, Lulu, because it's normally about 99%. And one woman this particular day when I was speaking at this bank, one woman went, 200% sure. You've got to be more than sure.
Wow. Why do you think women in particular feel like this perfectionism and need to be sure is so important?
Well, I think what it is, I think women they don't like BS. They feel that if they're just gung ho or they're not 100% sure, then they're not being real, they're not being true, they're not being a good person. I don't know. But we all have this weird perfectionist thing. I mean, whenever there's any kind of questions about perfectionism, it's always women that are much more of a perfectionist than men. But when you actually are there on site doing a session in front of 100 people, and everyone, all the women are saying 90%, 95%. And I think on that occasion, there was one woman that said, okay, I'm going to go for 85%. But on this particular day, this guy put his hand up at the back. And I was thinking, oh no, I've offended the men in the room. He said, look, I don't agree with you. I said, why? He said, I don't think men need to be 60% sure to speak up. I think men need to be, much less. And the woman, that said 200% nearly fell on the floor. The whole audience is going, no. Anyway, the point is that all the men agreed that day that men didn't have to be 60% sure. They had to be 30% sure.
Yeah. And as you said, with me being a rebel, but that becomes from as well, being a defense litigator, I kind of learnt to have to stand up and say what people didn't want to hear, right? So I've had training in doing that. And actually, I avoided that when I trained as a lawyer. I thought I would, become a solicitor so I could sit and hide in the office and not have to stand up and speak up. But I was forced to do that as a court litigator. And that was the thing that I was the best at, ultimately.
Really? That's interesting. But here's the thing. So normally when I'm speaking to a room full of women and they all want to be 100% sure, I say, well, look, you're never going to be, and when it comes to communication and speaking up, you're never going to be 100% sure. You're never, ever, ever going to be 100% sure. So guess what? Let's all make a pact now. Let's all just say, let's all be 80% sure. So my first tip of the day, if you're thinking about public speaking or getting out there or speaking up in whatever capacity, just say to yourself, I'm going to go for 80% today.
Yeah, just go for that 80%.
Because you're 75, 80, right? That is amazing. But look at you. You've got a radio show.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you need is the 75, 80%.
Yeah, and honestly, it does unclog the blockers if you just say, look, I'm going to be 80%. Don't be perfect. We and it's women more than men. I'm afraid I have witnessed it time and time again in front of thousands of people, not just that sample of 100. I've spoken in front of 200 people here, another 100 there, another 200 here, and every time women are like 100%, 99%, and the men are like, nah, it's less than 60. It's more like 40 or 30.
Is there an element as well, I quite often say, with the business world being designed by men for men, I really get the impression that when men speak, and this is no criticism, they love to be listened to. Whereas when women speak, often we love the art of conversation. We want that feedback and that chipping in and that interrupting. And I feel like a lot with traditional business is this kind of idea of presenting and speaking to just be listened to without being interrupted. Do you think that carries any weight?
Absolutely. I mean, I hear stories all the time about, the men are in the meeting and they're like, oh yeah, speaking. And a lot of women say, I was man-interrupted.
Man-interrupted.
By the way, I'm not anti-men. I've got 4 brothers, and a lot of men struggle with public speaking as well. So this isn't about women versus men, and men are bad and men are obnoxious. But,
no.
But men tend to be comfortable in meetings in old-fashioned environments like banks and particularly senior, a room full of senior people. Men are much more comfortable, oh yes, and agreeing with each other, laughing, and women can feel a little bit kind of interrupted or not listened to in that environment. So I've got a few tips on that. And then again, this is anecdotal evidence, but many, many, many stories. I've heard hundreds of stories of women that are really intelligent, credible, actually do speak up quite a lot, but still feel that they're not listened to.
Yeah.
And I think it's you can't change overnight. You can't change culture overnight. But you
No.
can do is, that's why I wrote my book, how to overcome glossophobia, because it's how do you position yourself as the expert? How do you get your voice heard? Well, one way is by actually creating the scene, the stage, setting the stage for you to be the person in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few different ways of doing that. So, for example, in a meeting, it could be that you tell the chairperson of the meeting, whether it's man or woman, it's in a bank or a law firm or one of the big four, it might be a man. But one of the strategies is to get the chairperson to introduce your idea. So you tip them off before the meeting.
Right.
Got this really good idea I'd like to share, and tip them off. So they actually give you the stage, as it were.
Yeah, great tip.
And
Yeah.
that's a really good tip. But then one of my clients, I was like, when Richard, the chairman, says, and now it's Gabriella's turn, don't you dare mess it up.
Yeah, definitely. But I also love that as a tip, because you're kind of holding yourself accountable then, aren't you? From not chickening out and sitting there going, shall I speak up? Shall I speak up? You've told somebody that you're going to do it.
Yeah, and then this is where we're talking about meetings and boardrooms and that kind of environment now. I mean, learning to speak up and do fully blown public speaking, which is what I'm encouraging people to do, particularly women. I mean, that you are then seen as the expert. You are in charge of that room. You hold the audience. You are there owning your space. It is unbelievably important to do that. And it's so powerful. It's a game changer to your business. It's a game changer to your career. So whether you're in business at a conference doing it, or whether you're running your own business, or you're setting up your own business, you want to be in an environment where you are seen and heard as the expert.
Absolutely. And why has women being seen and heard as the expert been such a motivator for you? Why do you think we need more women speaking up, and what impact can that make when we do?
I heard a great quote the other day, and I've forgotten the quote. It was something, you can't be, what is it? Something like, it was a careers thing. It was something like, you can't be what you don't see. Be what you don't see. So we don't see enough women. We just don't see them. At the conferences, holding the meeting, doing the town hall, around the boardroom, all the senior people. I mean, there's way more women in politics now than ever before. So on TV, we do see a lot of women but in the corporate environment, there are way more male partners than female partners.
Yeah.
If just as a general observation, particularly I work in the financial services. I work in the city. I'm based in London, in the city, and I work with a lot of accountancy firms, and people in data and that kind, and audit, that kind of environment.
Yeah.
And all of the senior people nearly tend to be men in suits. It's unbelievably important to get more women in positions where they are seen and heard and they're role models, and it's normal. As soon as it's normal to see women up there speaking and leading and being powerful, it's not a big deal anymore. And then other women will think, all right, I'll do a job like that. Oh, I could do that. I'd like to do that job. That's so important.
Yeah, and having those role models, because again, it's that, isn't it? Is there an element of women, needing to find a way to do it that's authentic to us in a way that we're comfortable with? For example, I know you used politics and stuff there, and that's kind of the world that I come from in terms of, the legal world, but they're kind of shouting the aggression. I can't even watch it on TV these days.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's really difficult to position yourself as a powerful, credible person with gravitas when you're in an environment which is a slightly different pack of animals.
Yeah, gravitas. Yeah, I love that. And different pack of animals.
It's a pack of animals, but here's the thing. There's nothing more powerful than somebody who owns their own space. And this is what my book's all about. Goodbye Glossophobia. It's about venturing outside your comfort zone. It's about pushing your comfort zone, getting yourself out there to speak in public, but also having the courage to own your own authentic space. And that means be yourself. Be yourself and do it your way. And it is unbelievably terrifying to think, I'm going to have to do this my own way, which is different from that pack of animals over there.
Yeah.
My way. But also, and the big tip here for women, if you were to say to me, what is it that women have to do differently? Okay, they have to have a bit more courage. I think you've got to be brave, right? But you've got to have power mixed with warmth. If you're powerful, but you're kind of scary, powerful, that's off-putting, and you won't win over your audience. And there's no point in public speaking or being visible if your audience don't like you.
Yeah.
If you can add warmth to your power, and I've got loads of practical tips to do that. So that's just really in the way that you hold yourself, the way that you look, and the way you smile. You look at your audience, you smile at them, you have open body language. If you can look powerful, big, strong, owning your space, powerful like a big tiger, but with the warmth of the sun.
Yeah, with an element of that softness there as well as that power.
Yeah, it's warmth, and warmth is kind of generous. It's being generous with your audience. It's giving. It's sharing your space that you own. It's quite a difficult thing to pull off, actually, when you're terrified of doing it, for one thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk in that room. I'm going to walk on that stage, and I'm going to own that stage and own that space. And I'm also going to radiate warmth and help the audience to come into my world. You know, you've got to go there. My question to people that suffer from glossophobia, and my question to you, and you've done this already, Lulu. The question is, why shouldn't you do it?
Yeah. I totally agree. Why shouldn't you do it? And why not now as well, with women rising across the board of, finding I think what's really important that's come up, already in this conversation is that creating our own platforms, but also our own narrative and way of doing it. It doesn't have to be in the way that it's always been done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've said in chapter 5 to make your oddity your asset, which it massively resonates with me. Being always a rebel at heart, including when I was a lawyer at the legal profession, is a big part of my business. She Rebel Radio. How can we use what's odd about us, or weird, or different about us to give us that little extra oomph? Because I've been vegetarian for years, for an example. They thought that was kind of funny in the legal profession, called me a tree hugger. I lived in Brighton, But, how do we use that oddness to bring that warmth, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, so I used to think, I really wish I was more slick, or more, I felt as if I was a bit out of sorts, because I've been called, a box of frogs. I can't remember, a bonkers fruitcake.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, or she's bonkers, or one person called me a fizzy bubble waiting to pop,
That's like your own marketing message.
Fizzy bubble. But I used to fight that and think, oh no, I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be quirky. I want to be sophisticated. I'm trying to be a bottle of port, but actually I'm just Prosecco.
I would choose Prosecco every time.
But and when I work with my clients, I mean, gosh, I've worked with so many people. But for example, if you're from up north, people are like, oh, should I get elocution lessons? Or they're from China, or from Lithuania. They go, oh, I don't speak very well. I'm like, whatever you've got, if you've got it, flaunt it. But any quirk or weirdy thing that you've got, it's actually your asset, because that's what makes you unique. And it's a cliche. When I'm working with, very, very, people at the top, CEOs and people that are giving advice to people in their organization, they always say, we don't want cookie cutters. But a lot of my clients are like, I think they do want cookie cutters. And I'm not sure if I am in the cookie cutter. Or maybe my cookie cutter's a kind of unicorn. It's not meant to be a unicorn, People say, they don't want everyone to be the same. But sometimes when you're in a big organization, you feel like you're being forced into this kind of, got to be this type of person. And I think people quite often just forget that business is about people, and more and more and more business is personal, and people want to know people do business with a person. They don't only do business with a transaction. And the more that you can be yourself, the more compelling you are, and the more people will like you and trust you and know you and all those things. But in terms of the oddity, I've just got one funny example about one of my clients. Actually, he was a guy in a bank, and he actually had a something wrong with his eyes. He used to go around with a magnifying glass, and he was quite a shy person. Yeah. And in meetings, he used to go around and he didn't say anything about this magnifying glass. So it's kind of awkward that he walks in the meeting, he doesn't say much, he can't really read the small print very well, struggling because he can't see properly. And then I said to him, the thing is, right, you've got this eye, you've got a genetic disorder with your eye, and people are going to know you for that, and they're going to kind of know you for your magnifying glass. If you don't mention it, it could be a bit odd and uncomfortable. So, that's actually quite a good icebreaker, anyway. So after our session, he decided that was his kind of, rather than be embarrassed about his magnifying glass, he's going to start every meeting with, when they go around the table or whatever, he's going to say, my weapon of choice today is my magnifying glass. I've got this genetic disorder with my eyes. So by the way, you might think I don't see the small print, but I don't miss anything, and he's got jokes about his eyes. But he sent me an email, and he's like, it was just so brilliant. It was so easy to break the ice. People were getting their phones out and saying, look, there's a Zoom app, there's a Torch app, you can take a photo of a document and then you can enlarge it like this. And, that was seriously, and that was a proper oddity. It's about, that's what makes you unique, and that's what makes you memorable. And that's just one example. We've all got things about us that make us strange, unique, lovable, a bit quirky. Maybe you're more creative. If you're creative, be creative. Don't it.
Yeah, in the way that you dress, and all sorts, and being perfect. I'm deaf in one ear actually, and again, whenever I've kind of used that and shared that with people, it's always been a conversation starter. And I was speaking at an event quite recently, and I couldn't hear some of what was being said in the audience, and I didn't say, and I regretted that afterwards actually.
Oh,
I should have totally owned it, that I couldn't fully hear what was being said at the back. I was just too concentrating on listening. So eventually I got it right, but it made me take my eye off the ball and not just share that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, again, that's quite an odd thing about you, but it doesn't make me think, oh, you're not really a good person then.
Yeah, exactly. Is that perfect thing, as women, of going, oh, I've got to be X, Y, Z. But yeah, I definitely learned a lesson from that.
Well, so I'm terrible at spelling, and I think I'm semi-dyslexic. And when I wrote my book, I had a coach helping me. She just said, write it all down and I'll edit you. And honestly, the spelling mistakes, you would not believe how many spelling mistakes. One of my lawyer friends offered to proofread it for me, and she found I thought it was more or less okay. I knew there'd be a few typos. She found 1,000 typing errors. And then she said, we need to just watch the dash and the hyphens. I was like, is there a difference between a dash and a hyphen?
Yeah, it is. But that's why we have editors. I wrote an ebook a few years ago and had an editor. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I think I'm a bit dyslexic in terms of spelling. And I said to my mum about it, she went, oh, did you make lots of mistakes? And she's kind of always been on at me about that, or even pronunciations, that I might not pronounce things correctly, but I've actually always been a speaker. And I've always been asked to narrate and, things like that. It's only now I'm a bit older that I sort of say to her, well, that's how I say it. And there's nothing wrong with how I say it.
And this is the thing. Sometimes, people, isn't that a funny sentence? Oh, did you make mistakes? They're mistakes. It's like they're bad, naughty.
It's wrong.
Now, but there are some people who are really, really detail driven, like my friend who did the proofreading, and they're really, 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 really good at spelling, and they're pedants, and they're good at full stops, and they know every single dot, dash, cross every T, all that kind of stuff. But actually, that's a quirk in itself. That's kind of opposite. It's like, so I've got clients that have been, they said to me, when I said, make your oddity your asset, they went, well, I'm a bit OCD.
You're like, never.
But the thing is, right, their OCD, they can actually talk about how they organise their life with all their spreadsheets, a spreadsheet for moving house, a spreadsheet for outfits. One woman actually had a spreadsheet for all things she wears in front of different clients.
Oh my God, amazing. But
I love that. And one woman, she said, I'm a bit OCD, so I like to sort out my vegetables with tins, and I like to put she was a returner, a mum that would return back from work. She's really OCD, and I have to have the cheese and all the dairy products together and all of the tins together. And I said, oh, right, but that's okay. That's normal. Most people do that. She went, no, I'm talking about my 1-year-old's plastic food.
Oh, wow. Like, wow. It is. Yeah, I've got an episode, though, actually, of She Rebel Radio about your gift being your curse, in that your strength can't exist without its corresponding weakness.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Which I think is part of it, isn't it? I'm massively empathetic, and that does take place over detail, because I'm feeling into all sorts of stuff that I might, not get the full stop in the right place.
It's taken me more than 40 years to realise that, celebrate your strengths, but really, really celebrate them. Don't be embarrassed about whether it's your spelling or your chatty, and you might be, I was told off for being, chat, too chatty, bubbly, chatty, like, so what? So what? Just play on your strengths. And if you're really OCD and really good at organising and planning and you're a plannerina, brilliant. Be a plannerina and celebrate it, and tell people that you're a plannerina. Tell people, I like to plan. I can plan every detail. I love filing. I love filing your papers.
And Esther, was that you were told off for being chatty at school? I don't believe you. Surely not.
Yeah, always. And then I'll tell you a funny one. So my kids would say, oh, Mum, you're so embarrassing. And I used to think, even a few years ago, I think, oh gosh, I better watch that. I better be quiet. You better not be embarrassing. And now, I don't know, I just feel like I'm over that now. So they go, Mum, you're so embarrassing. And I say, I know.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes. I even made up a song.
Did you? Gonna totally own it and bring it in.
Yeah, it just starts with, I'm an embarrassing mum. I'm an embarrassing mum.
But they're loving you for that, definitely. And you also say we shouldn't imagine the audience naked.
Oh, yes.
Why is that old advice bad advice? It's not something that I've ever actually done. And I think for a lot of women, it might be a relief that we don't have to visualize the audience naked.
Okay, so going back to the public speaking thing, we've talked about, being yourself, and we've talked about confidence. And a lot of people have like really weird tips about, what you should do with public speaking. And one of the myths is imagine the audience naked. I mean, first of all, it's distracting, because imagine if, your boss was in the front row.
It's not good.
or your best client, in their best suit. It's not good because it's distracting. The other thing is, you really want to be visualizing all the things that are really going to help you. The reason why people say imagine the audience naked is because they're saying, the audience are just people. Like, imagine the Queen on the loo.
Yeah.
Take that image out of your head now.
I know. Yeah, it's not. It's
the audience aren't above you. I suppose it's a good way of thinking. The audience aren't. They're just normal people. They're just sitting there. They're not. They haven't got a hold over you or anything. So that, it's good to think that, to have the sentiments there, but actually walking on stage and imagining them naked, really, it makes you red.
Yeah, which is not what you want.
I've got one little tip, or a funny little story about one of the moments where I got over my glossophobia. I mean, I'm a speaker. That's what I do as a profession now. I left the BBC, set up my business, and speaking wasn't a major part of my business. It was more small groups and helping people with their confidence and helping people speak. But then people started asking me to speak, and I did struggle with it, because I'm the classic, extrovert, likes chit chat, likes rapport. Put me on a stage in front of a load of blank faces. I absolutely was terrified, and I dried up. In the past, I've had a bad experience speaking on stage to a large audience, and so I thought, I'm not really good at public speaking. It's not really my bag, and I really, really struggled. So every single tip that I talk about in my book, I have tried it and I have suffered, and I have tried, and I've experienced every single aspect of glossophobia. But I have a story about, just going back to the audience naked thing, about the audience. About them. I remember I've had many light bulb moments with my speaking, but one particular moment, I remember I was in quite a big auditorium, and it was I think it was an audit conference. It was the chief audit conference. So it was like lots of older blokes in suits in the audience, and it was quite a lot of people, probably more than 250 people. And a few years back, I would have died at the thought of that. But, this might have been, well, when I first started speaking, maybe that was 5 years ago, but this was a couple of years back. And I just remember thinking, I haven't got glossophobia. I'm not freaked out. I'm not going to break down, or my mind's not going blank. But that would have freaked me out before. Anyway, I was standing at the front, and one of the guys in the front row, I'd coached him before, so he knew me, and he said, "Oh, Esther, are you going to pick on us in the front row?" It was Richard, and I went, oh no, Richard, of course I won't pick on you. And then he was sitting next to his friend, and his friend was kind of like cowering, shaking, and he had a name tag on, and I don't know what his name was, Jeff, and I was like, I definitely won't pick on you, Jeff.
Oh, bless. It's like being at the front of a comedy show, and you're like, no, please don't.
You're going to pick on us. And then as their friends were coming in, they were going, sit with us. She might pick on us. She might pick. They were, very senior blokes probably in their 50s, as if they were 8-year-old boys in school, with the teacher might tell them off.
Yeah.
At that moment, I just remember thinking. At that moment, I thought, I used to be a rabbit in the headlights.
Yeah.
At that moment, I have got the bow and arrow. I am the poacher, and they are the rabbit in the headlights. And I can just look around the audience and imagine my warrior arrow. This is normally, I know I've just said you've got to be warm, and now I'm saying, shoot your audience. But what I'm saying is, I suddenly felt powerful. Realised at that moment they didn't have the power, I had the power, and all I had to do was stand there and look at different people, and with the right body language, and they were like, oh, is she going to talk? Is she going to pick on me?
Yeah, I love that. And that's like a way of commanding the room as well. But, as you say, doing it with warmth. But yeah, instead of imagining the audience naked, is imagining them as a rabbit in the headlights, that you could pick on one of them at any one time that you choose to do that. It's
pick on your audience.
Yeah, I love that. That's an amazing tip. Tip. And for us women, we haven't traditionally been allowed, in inverted commas, to be in powerful positions. How important is it for us, in terms of power posing? And, is there anything in particular that we might find extra helpful to be powerful? Say for that tip that you've just given, which I think is an amazing one. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, so we know there's a TED talk by Professor Amy Cuddy, Cuddy. Yeah. All about the posture and the power pose. When I was at the BBC, I actually made up this mnemonic, POSE, pose or acronym. And it was before that TED talk. But if you want to actually look into the science behind the power pose, which is like the Wonder Woman superhero pose, you can look at the TED talk, Google it. But my POSE basically stands for these 4 things. So even if you remember 1 out of the 4, you will feel more powerful, look more powerful, and sound more powerful. So
amazing.
It stands for posture. So quite simply, if you've done yoga or Pilates, stand tall. Take up every millimetre of your space. In fact, grow, even if you're sitting down listening to this, grow in your seat at least 1 inch taller. You can feel your spine stretching up. Stand tall, stand with your shoulders back, stand proud. And a really good posture is when your feet are using the gravity. Gravity is weight, and actually the word gravitas comes from gravity, which is weight. So imagine you've got a weighty gravity pulling your feet down, which grounds you, which is very powerful, because when you're grounded and you're not kind of tottering around, it gives you a lot of power just feeling your feet on the ground, which sounds really obvious, but actually we don't just say, get my feet planted and grounded. And then at the same time, you want your head to be floating up. So you really are maximizing your position and your posture. That itself is a powerful thing, and you can do that behind closed doors. If you are in front of an audience, use that body shape, use a good posture.
And can I interject there? So for women, heels or no heels, for me as a court advocate, I literally couldn't walk into a courtroom without my heels on unless it was like a Saturday remand court. Occasionally that happened and I felt really uncomfortable. But now actually I can't wear heels, particularly when I'm speaking. I need to feel grounded. Yeah,
absolutely. So I would say try and get a cool pair of shoes that have a bit of height on them but aren't tottery. Anything tottery, so like your stiletto, Christian Louboutin stilettos.
It's a no.
What you really want is some kind of, you want to feel feminine, you want to feel like you look good in your clothes. Absolutely, clothes are really important. You want to feel like you want to feel sassy, you want to feel like you look the part. But tottery, absolutely no. So it's here you can walk in. I've got really cool shoes from a website called Fluvog.
Oh.
If you want to Google Fluvog, FLUEVOG, Fluvog.
Yep.
It's a designer called John Fluvog. He's Canadian. And I got my shoes sent over from their European branch. And they're really quirky shoes, but they've got a bit of a heel on them, but they're really comfortable.
Nice, yeah. You need the comfort.
But there's loads of really good heel shoes. There's really good shoes with a heel that are comfortable that you don't totter around in.
Yeah, brilliant.
I would definitely recommend heels. I think you want to wear the shoes that you feel yourself in. You want to feel that you look good and sound good. So, and it's got to be appropriate for the event. And you're absolutely right. Some events, you need to wear heels, but otherwise you just don't feel like you're dressed up.
Yeah, you don't feel right. And in fact, that just made me chuckle there. That was advice that I used to give to clients attending court. Yeah. Shall I wear a suit? If you don't wear a suit usually, please don't.
Right, okay. Otherwise you're wearing a cheap suit.
Yes, exactly. It's like you've got to
awful like somebody else's suit look.
Oh yeah, please don't do that.
I'm not a fashion expert, and I struggled with I struggled with my own personal fear of public speaking because I didn't like the sensation of being in the spotlight myself. I also struggled with my own identity in terms of, fashion, because, I like to wear black because I think black makes me look slim. I like to cover up I sometimes call them my comedy breasts. You know what I mean, though? I've got quite a large chest, but actually it's really annoying because I used to think, oh my God, it's taking over it's taking over the way I look. So I realised that actually wearing jackets is good for me because I feel as if I'm kind of safe, I'm covered up, but also jackets can be powerful, but also jackets can be colourful, they can be feminine, they can be quirky. So for me, realising that my shopping strategy was to find a quirky, cool jacket has made a massive difference. And we're only talking about posture, but posture actually sets the scene for everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, how you feel, and yeah, totally. So what's the O, the S and the E?
Okay, so very briefly, O stands for oomph.
Oh, lovely.
Which is basically energy. Or in other languages, chayo, that's in Chinese, or yosha, Japanese, or auf geht's, that's German.
You know all of them, love it.
I know 57 languages, I think. S stands for speech. And I know you asked me a question earlier about voice. We could go back to women's voices and pitch and speech. But the rule of thumb when it comes to speech is if you have warmed up, if you've got a good posture and you have got a bit of oomph in you and you've warmed up a bit, your voice will automatically be more powerful. And really, lots of people ask me questions about voice. Should I have a lower voice? Should I get elocution lessons? Should I pause more? Rule of thumb is slow and loud tends to do the job if you want a quick fix.
Yeah.
And then finally, E, eyes and teeth.
Absolutely. I forgot about that one, even though that's your thing, right? Eyes and teeth.
That's my hashtag, eyes and teeth. It used to be in the 70s, tits and teeth.
Yeah, I was going to say the old one.
Yeah. But we don't say tits and teeth anymore because it's a bit un-PC.
Yes.
You do want to secretly think in your head, tits and teeth. And we will allow that.
It's a good reminder. And yeah, when I've even had like photos done and stuff for my business, the eyes are really important, aren't they? To add that warmth that you talked about as well, to kind of soften your eyes and have that soft focus.
Well, actually, eye contact is really important. And while speaking to a large group, people quite often say, do you speak to one person? Rule of thumb, as long as you speak to 3 areas in front of you, as if it's a piece of cake, 3 pieces of cake.
Yeah.
The left bit of cake, the middle bit of cake, and the right bit of cake, people will feel that you've included them.
Yeah.
So, but just eye contact, if you're around a boardroom table, looking out to the audience as opposed to your notes or your slides. Important.
Yeah, and totally, people can hide behind notes and slides, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also in the book, you've given us, some real helpful structure around, creating your golden hook, the process of chunking, which I love that because I've done that for years. I just didn't have a name for it. So that's really helpful. But why would, sorry?
It sounds rather disgusting, doesn't it, chunking?
It does. Yes, it does. It reminds me of some teenage parties, I think, back in the day. Why would you say public speaking, though, is more of an art than a formula per se?
Okay, an art. First of all, let's just do a quick. What do you call it? The lawyers say the meaning of the word, the interpretation of the word. What's that? What do lawyers do? They have to always have a meaning for each word. What do you call it?
Yeah. Oh God, you're taking me back now. It's all about interpretation, the law, anyway. That's for sure.
Of chunk. I'm just gonna talk about definition.
Definition of chunking.
So just in case you're listening, thinking, what the hell are they talking about? Soup or sick?
Yeah, totally. I was talking about sick in terms of my teenage days when it had a totally different meaning. It wasn't a good thing.
So basically, chunking is if you are going to be speaking or presenting to an audience, every little chunk of your content stands alone, and it's really good to start having lots of different stories in your armory, and you can use these stories for blogs, for articles, for presentations, for speeches, and just having chunks of material, chunks of content. So a little story for each bit of content is really, really helpful. Definitely. So that's what chunking is. But going back to your question about
why it's more of an art than a formula.
An art versus a formula. So here's the thing. There is a formula for public speaking, and there's a formula, anyone could have a running order or a flow. But it's a bit like saying, what's the X factor? I suppose the art is, you've just got to be yourself and throw yourself into it. And there isn't really a silver bullet. There isn't really it's all subjective, isn't it? And art is subjective. Like one person's brilliant is another person's, it's kind of like Marmite. But actually, Marmite is okay. But what you mustn't do is try and be everything to all people. Some people may not like it, but that's fine, because you can never please everybody all of the time. So there's no such thing as right and correct. You can't do right and correct public speaking because there's no such thing as right or wrong. Either some people are going to hate it, but 80% of the audience might love it. So that's why I'd say it's an art, it's subjective. But there are rules of thumb that tend to work more than others. Yeah. One of them is just throw yourself into it, be yourself. And you will get good at it if you do it and do it again and do it again and do it again. I talk in the book about, making sure that you target your audience and you position yourself in front of the audience that you're talking to. So you just got to know your audience, and you've got to, as I said once to Boris Johnson in the BBC studio, when he asked me if I had a tip for him, I said, yes, all you've got to do is love your audience a little bit more than yourself.
Has that tip lasted to today, I wonder?
I don't know if he ever took that on board. And in fact, I think he even said, oh, I don't think I can do that.
I love that. A little bit of sharing with the UK Prime Minister for you all. Amazing. And what did, a great point to finish on, would be what led you to leaving your role as a BBC producer and starting your own business?
Well, first of all, I thought, you know what? I like the idea that the world is my oyster and I can earn what I decide. I can earn more money for a start. And I knew that I had something in me that was something more entrepreneurial. I felt the BBC is a great place. I love it there. I felt as if I had golden handcuffs. So a lot of people that you've done it yourself, and you work with people that might feel as if their wings have been clipped in their job, or they're doing this job. And I was really good at working. I was a senior producer. I was really good at my job. I was conscientious and I was loyal and I worked really hard. I kind of knew that my wings were a bit clipped, and I knew that I had more to offer. And I am an entrepreneur, and actually my entrepreneurial skills weren't really being appreciated, and I wasn't really using them. And I felt as if I had more. And actually I really, really like working in business and in businesses and help win business. And when you marry the kind of broadcasting skills with business, it really is powerful, because it's about making an impact, getting the hook, using all the techniques that you do to hook an audience in on TV and radio, putting it into business. And that is a really powerful combination.
It's a great.
I love the variety. I like running my own show, and I love the variety, and it's hard work. But writing a book, I never thought I'd write a book.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never would have done if I'd just stayed as a staffer.
Yeah, and I love that you call it golden handcuffs. I've called it a golden slap in the face after the legal profession. So that's a slightly more positive take than mine. But definitely golden all the same. But and how important has public speaking been for you as a business owner, as many of our She Rebel radio listeners are or wanting to be?
Public speaking is a game changer to your business. It's been a game changer for my business, because I speak at conferences, I speak with clients, I speak at events, and every time I speak, people think, oh, I want her to come and speak at my event now. And it's like shaking hands with 100 people at the same time at a networking event. Rather than meeting one or two and getting a couple of business cards, I feel like I've met 100 people. And now I've written the book. And it's a short book. It's really simple to read. It's got tips in it.
It's great. It's very fun to read as well.
Yeah. And people, they buy my book, or they have it. If it's a client, they might get it for free. But if I'm speaking at a different event, they can buy it. And people have got a piece of my stuff to take away with them. And then when it comes to International Women's Day, for example, like on March the 8th, they're like, oh, I want her to come and speak at my women's network. Oh, I know somebody that needs her. Or, if somebody says I need a woman to speak about women in leadership, I'm there at the front of their mind because they've seen me speak and they've got my book. So in whatever you do, in whatever profession you are, if you speak in front of an audience, you are shaking hands with 100 people or 200 people at one time. And there's no downside to that.
No, absolutely not. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. What is next for you, and where can the She Rebel radio listeners find you?
Okay, so I just recorded the audio book.
Amazing. Love it.
Of Goodbye Glossophobia, which was quite hard work. I've got to say, it's not that easy, but I'm so glad I did it. Coming out soon. I'm doing loads of gigs around International Women's Day, and later this year I'm going to have an ebook out, which is how to get your dream promotion. So I'm on book mad, considering I can't really write. It's quite exciting. And if you want to buy my book or check me out, you can just go to my website, which is estherstanhope.com. That's Esther, ESTHER, Stanhope, STANHOPE.com. And there's a link to my book there, and there's blogs, really, and tips and all kinds of things.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll put all those links in the show notes so the listeners can access that really easily.
Great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Esther.
Well, Lulu, you are amazing yourself, and I love your She Rebel Radio. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I think you've got a fantastic style and a lot of sass.
Coming from a BBC producer and with so much experience, that means a lot. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach, Lulu Mims. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Mims on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Mims and on Instagram at LuluMims_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.